very lucky to be joined by Daniel Domscheit-Berg, a former spokesman for WikiLeaks, who's now the author of a new book called Inside WikiLeaks. Daniel, thanks for joining us at foreignpolicy.com. First, can you tell us what's your assessment of the current trial that's going on with respect to Julian Assange and the general perception about WikiLeaks in Western publics?
Well, in respect to the trial, I actually don't really know much more than anyone else. It certainly has become a political issue, so there are lots of influencers, I guess, that are trying to get their politics into that trial. And actually, I think the most important thing would be that this trial would just be dealt with in the right manner, without any outside influences, without all the media jumping on it all the time, and just bring it to a proper ending.
Should Julian Assange be transferred to the United States? Should he stand trial for treason?
Then this is the trial you're talking about, or more about Sweden? That's you see, these are two. That's one of the biggest problems we have today, is that we're talking about one legal problem, and basically everyone else has, or a lot of different entities have their own interest, and there is the United States government apparently trying to build a case against Julian, and on the other hand there is what seems to be a valid case in Sweden. And these get intermixed with each other, and they basically have nothing to do with each other. Now, so I would agree he would have to go to Sweden and face that allegation there, but I don't see where there is a basis for a trial against him in the United States.
In fact, even though you left WikiLeaks, you still believe that it has made a very important contribution to an overall objective, which is to have a more transparent society.
No, absolutely. WikiLeaks has triggered a cultural change that we today perceive. So similar to the Obama administration declaring that they want to be more open, and that triggering some kind of a cultural change, WikiLeaks has spawned a cultural change that goes bottom up. And in that respect, it has carried a very important debate about openness, about transparency, about the right to have a secret, and the need to also break a secret in some cases. It has carried that debate in the middle of society, and that is really important.
Now tell us why you left WikiLeaks.
Well, the thing is, if you walk on new territory, and if you do something as new as what WikiLeaks is providing, I think it's really impossible to not make mistakes. The important thing is that if you make a mistake, and some mistakes were made, you have to be able to admit that a mistake happened, and then change the way you do things, adapt to that insight that you have gotten, in order to avoid making that same mistake a second time. And that requires you to be able to accept criticism, and that is basically what in the last months seems to have become impossible within WikiLeaks even. So not just from the outside, but even in the organization, we really had trouble to just basically talk to Julian about having a different opinion on how some of these things worked out.
Give us an example of a specific disagreement.
Well, there are a couple of examples on that, but I guess the most striking one was in respect to the Afghanistan publication, which happened shortly before I decided to leave them. So there was a dispute about the whole way that Julian dealt with names that needed to be redacted from these documents before they were published, in order to not put any sources, intelligence sources of the United States forces in Afghanistan in danger. And I mean, we're talking about just about regular peasants in Afghanistan here that have nothing to do with a war, that do not follow any specific political agenda. They just happen to be living in the wrong place where there's a war going on. And these people shouldn't be implicated by an effort where you are just trying to make transparent what is happening in the war. And Julian basically, as much as I can tell, didn't really care for protecting these people, and I think that is a really bad attitude for anyone who is in the publishing business.
Now tell us what is new about OpenLeaks, the new organization that you have started.
Well, OpenLeaks is trying to avoid making some of the mistakes that we have perceived in WikiLeaks. So we're basically trying to be much less than WikiLeaks. We believe that openness and transparency is a very important good in society. And while parts of the world do not have the means for whistleblowers to, let's say, coexist in society, that do not have legal protection for whistleblowers and therefore require anonymity for these whistleblowers, we believe that the most important thing is to provide that technology and basically leave the rest to whoever is contacted by a whistleblower.
Do you have the same sources or different sources from what WikiLeaks has?
That's I guess up to the people that are going to work with us. We don't know. I don't know the sources that WikiLeaks has or had, and in the same way, I hope I'll never learn about any sources of OpenLeaks, or not of OpenLeaks, but of partners that we are going to work with.
Will you share some of the disclosures that you acquire through OpenLeaks with the media, or will you simply leave them on your own site as they are?
Well, OpenLeaks is not ever gonna publish anything itself. We are just offering technology. So existing media organizations, investigative reporter networks, NGOs, and other organizations that educate the public, that inform the public, that we just provide technology so these organizations can be contacted by anonymous sources, and the source can send them a document while remaining anonymous and protected. And that, I think, is a much more efficient approach, because you will enable, first of all, the source to remain in control over who receives that information and maybe also how it is published. And you make use of existing standards and existing expertise in these organizations that will decide about how to go about the publishing. And that is where WikiLeaks just, I think, try to be too much at once. And you cannot build from scratch, reinvent the wheel in so many respects an organization that is trying to answer all of these difficult questions within one organization's unaccounted for and all of that, and rather you just split it up and decentralize.
All right, Daniel Domscheit-Berg, author of Inside WikiLeaks and founder of OpenLeaks. Thanks so much for joining us on foreignpolicy.com.
Thanks a lot.